Can you be my boyfriend for a day? She asked the mechanic, unaware he was a hidden CEO. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The smell of motor oil and metal filled the small-town garage as the late afternoon sun poured through the dusty windows. Mia stood awkwardly beside her broken-down car, her floral dress streaked with dirt, her heels sinking slightly into the oil-stained concrete. Across from her, Ethan wiped his hands with a rag, his forearms dusted with grease. The hum of country music played faintly from an old radio. "So, what brings you here, Mrs.?" he asked, glancing up with calm blue eyes. "Mia," she blurted out, voice cracking. "And, I need more than a tow." He raised an eyebrow. "That right? Because the car looks like the least of your problems." She bit her lip, hesitating before blurting, "Can you be my boyfriend for a day?" The rag slipped from his hand. "Excuse me?" She winced. "I know how that sounds. Crazy, desperate. But I need someone to pretend just tonight to be my date for a party." His brows furrowed. "You want a mechanic to play your boyfriend?" "Please," she said quickly, voice trembling. "It's my ex's engagement party. I can't let them see I'm still alone. I'll pay you for your time." Ethan let out a soft laugh, shaking his head. "You're something else, lady." He turned to grab a wrench, pretending to focus on the open hood, but curiosity tugged at him. "Why not ask a friend?" "Because I don't have any left," she murmured, half to herself. "Not after what they did." The words hung in the air, raw and honest. He looked up again, really seeing her this time, the tiredness behind her makeup, the strength holding back humiliation. Something in his chest tightened. "What time's this party?" 7. "And what exactly do I get out of this besides embarrassment?" she asked softly. "Dinner," she offered weakly. "And maybe a reason to laugh at people richer than us." Ethan chuckled. Tempting. He leaned against the car, studying her. She was clearly out of her depth, a woman who once belonged in another world but had fallen out of orbit. Against his better judgment, he found himself saying, "All right, I'll do it, but only for one night." Her eyes widened in relief. "Thank you. I promise it'll be simple. Just pretend to like me, act confident, don't say you fix cars for a living." "That part's going to be tough," he teased, a small grin tugging at his lips. "Guess I'll have to be whoever you need me to be." She smiled for the first time that day, the tension breaking. "Perfect. Then we have a deal." Ethan nodded, tossing the rag aside. "Better hope I clean up well." She laughed nervously, glancing at the silver band on his finger, a ring too elegant for a mechanic. She almost asked, but he slipped it into his pocket before she could. "Meet me here at 6, he said, his voice quieter now. As she walked away, he watched her go, something uneasy stirring beneath his calm. Because Mia didn't know the man she just hired wasn't just a mechanic. He was the hidden CEO of the very company her ex worked for. And tonight, pretending might become the most dangerous truth of all. The next evening, the low hum of engines filled the small-town garage as the clock struck 6. Mia arrived right on time, clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded. What if he had changed his mind? But when the door swung open, she froze. Ethan stood there, freshly showered, hair slicked back, wearing a perfectly fitted navy suit that looked nothing like anything a mechanic should own. The transformation stunned her. He looked calm, confident, and against all odds handsome in a quiet, devastating way. "Wow," she breathed. "You clean up really well." Ethan smirked, tugging slightly at the cuff of his jacket. "You said not to look like a mechanic." I took it seriously. He offered his arm, mock formality in his tone. "Shall we, Miss Pretend Girlfriend?" She chuckled nervously and looped her arm through his. The drive into the city felt unreal. Mia kept adjusting the strap of her purse, trying to calm the flutter in her stomach. "You do not have to talk much tonight," she reminded him. "Just smile, nod, and maybe tell them you work in consulting or something vague." Ethan grinned at the road ahead. "Consulting? That sounds suspiciously boring." "I might die of small talk," she sighed. "You have no idea how cutthroat those parties can be." "Oh, I have a feeling I do," he said quietly, almost to himself. She missed the way his eyes hardened for a second. When they arrived, the Ferris Hotel glimmered like gold. Inside, chandeliers sparkled above a crowd of perfectly dressed guests. Every laugh felt rehearsed, every smile strategic. Mia swallowed hard and straightened her shoulders. Ethan, by contrast, seemed completely unfazed. "Ready?" he asked. "No," she whispered. "But let's do it anyway." As they entered, heads turned. Her ex, Andrew, froze mid-conversation, his fiancée's hand still looped around his arm. His smirk flickered. "Mia," he greeted too sweetly. "I did not expect to see you here." She smiled tightly. "You look happy." "I am," he said, eyeing Ethan. "And this must be?" Ethan extended a hand. Ethan Cole, her boyfriend. The handshake lingered just a little too long. Ethan's grip was steady, his gaze calm, but there was steel beneath it. Andrew shifted first, clearing his throat. "Well, congratulations," he muttered before turning away, clearly rattled. Mia released a shaky breath. "You were perfect," she whispered. That look on his face, priceless. "Glad to be of service," Ethan murmured, his lips twitching. They drifted toward the buffet, and for the first time in months, Mia felt like she could breathe. She laughed at something Ethan said about the fancy hors d'oeuvres. He listened when she talked about her failed career in PR and how speaking the truth had cost her everything. "You stood up for what was right," Ethan said softly. "That is not failure. That is courage." The sincerity in his tone caught her off guard. Before she could reply, a photographer approached. "Couple photo?" Ethan hesitated, then placed a hand gently on her waist. The warmth of his touch startled her, but she did not pull away. The camera clicked, capturing a moment that looked far too real. As the night wore on, the act began to blur with something else. Every time he smiled at her, every time his fingers brushed hers, it felt less like pretending and more like remembering something they had both lost long ago. When they stepped out onto the terrace for air, city lights shimmered below like scattered stars. Mia leaned against the railing, letting the cool breeze brush her hair. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for helping me survive tonight." Ethan looked at her, his voice low. "You did not just survive, Mia. You owned it." She turned, smiling faintly. "You really are too good at this." "Maybe I have had practice," he replied, eyes distant. She frowned slightly, sensing the weight in his words. "You sound like a man with secrets." He laughed softly, a sound that did not quite reach his eyes. "Maybe someday I will tell you." As they stood there beneath the lights, neither noticed the flash of a camera from inside the ballroom, nor the headline that would appear the next morning. "Who is the mystery man with PR whistleblower Mia Lewis?" The story had just begun. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds of Mia's small apartment, casting stripes of gold across the floor. She sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through her phone when her breath caught. There it was, an article splashed across the morning headlines. "Who is the mystery man with PR whistleblower Mia Lewis?" The photo showed her and Ethan on the terrace, his hand still resting lightly on her waist, her face turned toward him mid-laugh. It looked intimate, almost romantic. Her phone buzzed with messages from coworkers and reporters. Her heart sank. "Oh no, Ethan," she whispered, dialing his number. No answer. She tried again, then gave up. She grabbed her coat and rushed out. The garage was quiet when she arrived, the air thick with the smell of oil and steel. Ethan stood by the open hood of a car, sleeves rolled up, looking as if nothing had happened. "You saw it?" she asked breathlessly. He nodded once, expression unreadable. "It is not a big deal. It will blow over." "Not a big deal? They think you are my secret boyfriend. They are speculating about who you are, where you work. Someone even said you look like that tech guy. What is his name? Cole something." He froze for a fraction of a second, then went back to tightening a bolt. "People talk. Let them." "Ethan, this could ruin you if they find out," she began, then stopped, realizing the weight of her own words. "If they find out what?" he asked, finally meeting her eyes. For a moment she saw something flicker there, fear, or maybe regret, but then it was gone. "Nothing," she murmured, shaking her head. "Forget it." He set the wrench down and wiped his hands on a rag. "Look, Mia, last night was supposed to be pretend. We helped each other, that is it. No one owes anyone anything." The words hit harder than she expected. "Right," she said quietly, forcing a smile. "Just pretend." But as she turned to leave, Ethan's voice stopped her. "You did great last night," he said softly. You showed them they could not break you. She looked back, eyes softening. Thank you, she whispered before walking out. That night, alone in his small office at the back of the garage, Ethan stared at the same article she had seen. His phone buzzed with a call from a blocked number. You said you wanted to stay under the radar, a cold voice said on the other end. Now your face is all over the news. The board is not happy. Ethan exhaled slowly. I will handle it. You had better, the voice snapped. Coal Industries cannot afford another scandal. Do not let this girl distract you. The line went dead. Ethan ran a hand over his face, the weight of his double life pressing down. He had left the corporate world to investigate corruption within his own company from the ground up. The garage, the grease, the ordinary life, it was all part of the disguise. But Mia had not been part of the plan. She had reminded him of something he had buried: honor, truth, compassion. And now she was caught in his storm. Meanwhile, Mia sat in her tiny kitchen, staring at the same silver ring she had seen on his finger, the one he had hidden that night. Her mind replayed every word, every glance. Who was he, really? The next morning, she walked into the local coffee shop and froze. Ethan was there, standing by the counter, talking to a man in a sleek suit who clearly did not belong in a garage. She slipped behind a shelf of magazines, watching. The man handed Ethan a folder. You cannot keep playing both sides, he said sharply. You are either in or out. Ethan's jaw tightened. I said I will take care of it. When the man left, Mia stepped out. So, you are not just a mechanic, she said quietly. Ethan turned, startled. Mia, save it. She cut him off. I trusted you, Ethan. You told me it was just pretend. But everything about you is a lie, is it not? His silence was answer enough. I do not even know who you are, she whispered, voice breaking. You do not, he admitted finally, his eyes dark with guilt. But I swear, I never meant to hurt you. Too late, she said, backing away. Whatever game you are playing, I am done being a part of it. She turned and walked out, her footsteps echoing across the tile floor. Ethan stood there in silence, the sound of the door closing behind her cutting through him like a blade. For the first time in years, the man who had everything realized he might have just lost the only thing that mattered. Days passed, but the silence between them stretched like an unspoken wound. Mia tried to throw herself into work, picking up freelance gigs and avoiding every article that mentioned Ethan Cole. The internet was flooded with speculation. Some said he was an undercover CEO investigating corporate fraud. Others claimed he was hiding an inheritance scandal. None of it made sense. Yet every piece hurt. She replayed their last conversation again and again, the look on his face when she walked away. He had said he never meant to hurt her, but his lies had done exactly that. Meanwhile, in his penthouse overlooking the city, Ethan stood before the massive windows, the skyline glimmering below like a reminder of everything he could not escape. The board had summoned him for an emergency meeting. Reporters were outside, demanding answers. He had spent years building a cover to find out who had been stealing from his own company. But now, because of one night and one woman, the truth was dangerously close to unraveling. He turned his phone over in his hand. Her name glowed on the screen in old text, threads her laughter in every line. His chest ached. For the first time, the boardroom felt colder than the garage ever did. His assistant knocked softly. Sir, the press conference is confirmed for Friday. Cancel it, he said quietly. But the shareholders are expecting a statement. Ethan's jaw tightened. They will get one, just not the one they expect. That evening he found himself driving back to the same garage, the one he had not stepped foot in since she left. The smell of oil and metal hit him like memory. He sat in silence, fingers tracing the worn steering wheel. For a man who could buy anything, he had never felt more broke. Across town, Mia walked through the rain, clutching a cardboard box of groceries. Her phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. It read, "Turn on the television." She frowned but obeyed. The local news channel flickered to life. Ethan stood at a podium, microphones flashing before him. "My name is Ethan Cole," he said, voice steady. "I am the CEO of Coal Industries. For months, I have been working undercover to expose internal corruption within my company. The woman photographed with me has nothing to do with this investigation. She did not know who I was, and she should not be dragged into this mess. If anyone is to blame, it is me." The reporters erupted with questions, but he stepped back, his expression unreadable. Mia stared at the screen, stunned. He had risked everything to protect her. The next day, she arrived at the garage. It was quiet, except for the sound of rain dripping from the ceiling. Ethan was there, packing up tools into a small box. "You are really leaving," she said softly. He turned, startled but calm. "I have to. The board wants me back in New York. They made it clear there is no place for the man who pretended to be someone else." She hesitated, her voice trembling. "Why did you do it, Ethan?" The lies, the garage, all of it. He met her gaze, and for once there was no wall between them. Because when you are surrounded by people who only care about money, you forget what real honesty looks like. Then you came along. You did not see a CEO or a paycheck. You saw a person. I wanted to remember what that felt like. Her throat tightened, words catching somewhere between anger and forgiveness. "You could have just told me." "I was afraid," he admitted. "Not of losing the company, but of losing how you looked at me before you knew the truth." The air hung heavy between them. Finally, she said quietly, "You already lost that, Ethan, but maybe you did not have to." He smiled faintly, sadness in his eyes. "Take care of yourself, Mia." She watched him walk out into the rain, his coat darkening with every drop, the silver ring glinting faintly in the gray light. She whispered into the empty garage, "Goodbye, Ethan." But deep down, neither of them truly believed it was the end. A month passed, and the city moved on from the headlines. But Mia could not. Every time she walked past the garage, a hollow ache returned. She had gone back to freelancing in public relations, but her heart was not in it. Late one evening, she sat by her small apartment window, sipping cold coffee, watching the rain streak down the glass. The television played softly in the background until a familiar voice caught her attention. It was Ethan's. He was at a charity gala, addressing a crowd. "Coal Industries is launching a nationwide initiative," he said, his tone calm but sincere. "A scholarship and job training program for women in the automotive field. Because talent should never be wasted, no matter where it comes from." The camera panned, showing the stage banner, the Mia Lewis Foundation. Mia's breath caught. Her hands trembled as the mug slipped from her grasp, shattering on the floor. She stared at the screen, disbelief flooding her. He had used her name, not for attention, not for sympathy, but to honor her. Tears blurred her vision as his voice continued. "She reminded me that dignity is not measured in wealth, but in courage. This foundation exists because one woman dared to speak the truth." The room blurred around her. For the first time in weeks, she smiled through her tears. The next morning, she received an invitation delivered by courier. It was simple, elegant, embossed with silver ink. "You are cordially invited to the launch of the Mia Lewis Foundation, hosted by Ethan Cole." For hours she debated whether to go, heart wrestling between pride and longing. Finally, she chose a pale blue dress, the same one she had worn the night she first met him. At the gala, soft piano music filled the hall. Ethan stood on stage, shaking hands and giving interviews, composed yet searching the crowd as if for something or someone. When he saw her, time seemed to pause. She approached slowly, unsure what to say. "You used my name," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. He smiled gently. "It was the only name that made sense. You inspired it." "You did not have to do that," she said, blinking back tears. "I wanted to," he replied. "You once told me I should stand for something real. Now I am trying." They stood in silence for a long moment before he added quietly, "I never wanted to hurt you, Mia. Everything I did was to fix the damage I caused." She looked up at him, her voice trembling. "You already did, Ethan. You fixed more than you know." The applause from the audience faded as he reached into his pocket. He held out a small velvet box. Inside was the same silver ring she had once noticed, now polished until it gleamed. "One day, you asked me to pretend," he said softly, "and I did. But I stopped pretending a long time ago." The crowd quieted, sensing something real unfolding. "This is not about contracts or appearances," he continued. "It is about second chances. Will you give me one?" Mia's eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling into a smile. "You never really stopped being my boyfriend for a day, did you?" Ethan laughed softly, relief breaking through. "No, I did not. I just hoped one day it would be forever." She nodded, tears falling freely now. "Then yes, Ethan. Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger as the room erupted in applause. Flashbulbs popped, music swelled, but for Mia, the world fell silent. All she saw was the man who had once been covered in grease and lies, now standing before her with nothing but truth. Later, under the city lights, they stood together on the balcony. She leaned into him, whispering, "For a man who was supposed to be fake, you turned out to be very real." He smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Best contract I ever signed." The night breeze carried their laughter into the stars, where one fated mistake had turned into a forever love. A few months later, spring returned to the city, painting every street corner with blooming magnolias and soft sunlight. Mia's life had transformed in ways she never imagined. The foundation that bore her name had become a movement. Young women were signing up for training programs, finding confidence in their own hands and their own skills. Every time she visited a new training site, she saw pieces of herself in the women there, fearful, uncertain, but refusing to give up. Ethan had kept his promise. He had stepped down as CEO, allowing a new board to take over while he dedicated himself fully to the foundation. The world called it an act of redemption. To Mia, it was simply Ethan being the man she had always believed he could be. They moved into a modest house on the edge of the city, far from skyscrapers and noise, a place filled with quiet mornings and the smell of coffee. She would often find him sitting on the porch, reading newspapers with grease still faintly under his nails. The mechanic in him never really left, and she loved that about him. One weekend, they returned to the old garage, the place where it had all begun. Dust floated through the afternoon light, settling on the worn workbench. The sign above the door still read Coal Auto Repair, its paint chipped but proud. "I cannot believe it is still here," Mia said softly, running her fingers over the old counter. "You never sold it?" Ethan shook his head with a small smile. "I could not. This place reminded me who I was before everything got complicated." She turned toward him, teasing. "Before I walked in and turned your world upside down?" He laughed quietly. "Exactly." She leaned against the car lift, watching him with that same warmth in her eyes. "You know, people still think our story sounds like something out of a movie." "Maybe it is," he said, stepping closer. "But it is our movie." Outside, the sound of laughter drew their attention. A group of young women from the foundation were visiting for their hands-on training day. Mia waved as they entered, their faces bright with hope. One of them, a girl named Ava, looked around wide-eyed. "Is it true this is where you two met?" she asked shyly. Mia smiled. "Right here. I asked him to be my fake boyfriend, and somehow he forgot to stop pretending." Ethan chuckled, slipping his arm around her. "Best deal I ever made," he said, echoing the words that had become their private joke. As the trainees began working, Mia noticed Ethan quietly helping one girl struggling with a wrench. His patience, his calm, his encouragement, it was the same kindness she had seen the first day they met. Watching him, she realized their story had come full circle. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they closed up the garage. The sky burned in hues of gold and rose, and the air smelled faintly of motor oil and spring flowers. Ethan locked the door and turned to her. "You know," he said softly, "for a long time, I thought happiness was something you had to earn with money. But you taught me that real happiness is just being here." Mia reached up, brushing her thumb against his cheek. "You taught me that love can start from something as simple as pretending." He smiled, tilting his forehead against hers. "Then let us never pretend again." She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Never." The camera flash from a passing journalist's car caught them by surprise, but this time, neither flinched. Their story was no longer about scandal or deception. It was about two people who had found truth in the most unlikely place, a small garage, a mistaken proposal, and a love that refused to be anything less than real. As the evening breeze rustled the leaves, Mia laughed softly, whispering, "Best contract we ever signed." Ethan's hand found hers, warm and steady, and the only one that will never expire. Together they walked away, leaving the lights of the garage glowing behind them like a promise that some stories, no matter how unlikely they begin, are meant to last forever. 6 months later, the hum of life at the foundation had become their rhythm. Mia balanced workshops, media interviews, and mentoring programs, while Ethan handled the operations quietly from behind the scenes. Every morning started with the same ritual: coffee on the porch, soft laughter, and a kiss before heading to work. But one morning, Ethan found an envelope on their doorstep. It was embossed with the coal industry's seal. He opened it slowly. Inside was a formal invitation to return as CEO. The board wanted him back, publicly this time, to help guide the company through a major expansion. He sat still for a long moment, the letter trembling slightly in his hand. When Mia stepped outside, drying her hair with a towel, she noticed his expression. "What is it?" she asked gently. He handed her the letter. She read it silently, her face unreadable. "They want you back," she said softly. Ethan nodded, his voice calm but uncertain. "They say the company needs my leadership again. But if I go back, I know what it means: long hours, travel, scrutiny, all of it." Mia placed a hand on his arm. "Ethan, you built that company. If going back means doing it right this time, maybe it is worth it." He searched her eyes, the weight of choice pressing on him. "And if it means losing this peace we built?" She smiled faintly. "Then we built it again, together." The following weeks were a blur. Reporters filled headlines with Cole's comeback. Investors praised his integrity, and the public seemed to embrace his redemption story. Yet even as his office lights burned late into the night, he made it home in time for dinner. Mia would tease, "The CEO still knows how to make it for spaghetti night." He would grin, "Only for my favorite boss." Despite the laughter, a quiet worry lingered in her chest. The fame, the pressure, the attention they had nearly destroyed him before. One night, after a long day of press meetings, Ethan found Mia sitting alone in their living room, papers scattered across the table. "What are these?" he asked. She smiled tiredly. "Applications. I want to open another branch of the foundation upstate, somewhere women do not have access to training." He looked at her with admiration. "You never stop, do you?" "Neither do you," she said, glancing up at him. "Maybe that is why we work." He chuckled, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "Maybe." But the following week, trouble struck. An anonymous report accused the foundation of receiving illegal funding from coal industries. The media twisted the story, painting their marriage as a conflict of interest. Headlines read, "CEO's wife in scandal charity," or "cover-up." The board demanded an explanation. Paparazzi crowded their front lawn. Mia tried to hold strong, but the whispers cut deep. "I never took a cent I did not earn," she said through tears. Ethan pulled her close. "I know, and I will make them see it." The next morning, he walked into the coal industry's press conference, cameras flashing. "I am not here to defend my wife," he began firmly. "I am here to remind everyone what she stands for." The Mia Lewis Foundation was funded entirely by transparent, audited donations. Every dollar is accounted for. She is the most honest person I have ever known, and if the world cannot see that, then I no longer wish to be part of that world. The room went silent. For the first time, the corporate titan spoke like a man in love, not a CEO. Within hours, independent investigators cleared the foundation of all wrongdoing. Public sympathy turned in their favor, and donations tripled overnight. That evening, Ethan returned home exhausted, his tie loose, his shoulders slumped. Mia met him at the door. "You did not have to risk everything again," she said softly. He smiled wearily. "I would risk it every time if it means protecting you." She reached for his hand, her eyes filled with warmth. "We are stronger than the noise, Ethan." "We always have been," he nodded, pulling her into his arms. Outside, the cameras still flashed, but inside, their world was quiet and whole. In the end, the man who had once hidden behind lies now stood in the open, and the woman who had once lost everything had helped him find the truth. Together, they had become what neither could be alone, a love built not on pretending but on perseverance. Weeks passed, and the storm of headlines slowly faded into memory. The foundation continued to thrive, stronger than before, and coal industries recovered its reputation with new leadership values that Ethan insisted on: integrity, transparency, and compassion. Yet even as the world settled back into order, Mia could sense a change in Ethan. He smiled, but sometimes his eyes carried a faraway look, as if he was standing between two worlds: the man of steel and glass towers, and the mechanic who once fixed broken engines in a quiet garage. One evening, after a long board meeting, he returned home later than usual. The house was dark except for a single lamp on the table. Mia sat there waiting, her hands folded neatly on her lap. "You are home," she said softly, but her voice trembled. He loosened his tie, his exhaustion showing. "I am sorry. The meeting ran longer than I expected." "It always does lately," she replied. The words hung in the air like static. "Ethan, when was the last time we had dinner without phones ringing or reporters calling?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You know this is temporary. Once the merger closes—" "You said that last month," she interrupted gently. "And the month before." He looked at her then, realizing how much time he had lost chasing the peace he already had. "Mia," he began quietly, "I did not mean to drift away. I just thought if I fixed everything out there, maybe we could finally rest." She stood, walking over to him. "Ethan, we already have everything we need. We do not need perfection. We just need each other." Her words sank deep into him. That night, while she slept, he sat by the window, staring out at the city lights. They once represented power, but now they only reminded him of distance. The next morning, he made a decision. He called a board meeting, shocking everyone with his words. "I am stepping down," he announced, "for good this time." Gasps filled the room. "You cannot walk away now," one executive protested. "The company needs your face." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then it is time the company learns to stand without it." He signed the papers, stood, and walked out. No headlines, no speech, just quiet resolve. Later that day, he drove home, stopping by the old garage on his way. Dust coated the counters, and the faint smell of motor oil still lingered. He picked up an old wrench, turning it in his hands. It was the first tool Mia had ever seen him hold. In that moment, he realized something profound: leadership was never about control. It was about responsibility, and love was the same. When he arrived home, Mia was watering plants by the porch. She turned, surprised. "You are home early." He smiled, a lightness in his eyes she had not seen in months. "I am home for good." She stared at him, stunned. "You mean?" "Yes," he said simply. "No more meetings. No more boardrooms. I am done pretending that success means losing us." Her eyes filled with tears, a laugh breaking through. "What will you do now, Mr. Retired CEO?" He grinned. "Maybe go back to fixing cars, or build a training center for kids who want to learn something real." She wrapped her arms around him, resting her head against his chest. "Ethan, you already built something real. You built us." They stayed like that for a long time, the world outside quiet and still. Weeks later, news outlets reported that Ethan Cole had permanently left the corporate world to focus on philanthropy and mentorship. Some called it a fall from power, others called it courage. But for Ethan and Mia, it was simply life: authentic, simple, and finally free. One afternoon, as they hosted a community workshop at the garage, a young boy looked up at Ethan and asked, "Were you really a millionaire?" Ethan smiled, handing him a wrench. "Once. But now, I am something better." "What is that?" the boy asked. "Happy," Ethan said. Mia glanced at him, her smile soft and full of pride. And his laughter echoed through the garage. They both knew their story had not ended with wealth or fame. It had ended right where it began, with grease-stained hands, honest work, and a love that had never been fake. A year later, the garage had transformed into something magical. The sign above the door now read Cole and Lewis Training Center, hand-painted in bold red letters, its edges trimmed with ivy that Mia insisted on planting herself. Inside, laughter filled the air. Students worked under the soft hum of ceiling fans, the scent of oil mingling with fresh coffee from the small machine Ethan had set up in the corner. The world outside still remembered them as the millionaire and the whistleblower. But in here, they were simply Ethan and Mia, the teacher and the mentor, the husband and the wife who built something from kindness. On a warm Saturday afternoon, they hosted the center's first anniversary celebration. Former trainees returned, now with jobs of their own, bringing their families to say thank you. A local news crew filmed the event, but Ethan paid little attention to the cameras. His eyes were on Mia, who stood by a small stage, giving a speech that silenced the crowd. "When we started this," she said, voice trembling slightly, "I never imagined it would grow beyond one dusty garage. But this place is not about engines or tools. It is about second chances. It is about remembering that people are not defined by where they come from, but by what they choose to build." The audience erupted in applause. Ethan stepped up beside her, slipping an arm around her shoulders. "You forgot to mention," he said, smiling, "that none of this would exist without the woman who once trusted a stranger in a garage." The crowd laughed warmly. Mia blushed, whispering, "And none of it would exist without the man who said yes to pretending." Their story had become legend in the small town, how a broken car led to a partnership that changed countless lives. After the speeches, the guests left one by one, leaving the couple alone under strings of soft golden lights. Mia sat on the hood of an old car watching Ethan clean up tables. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked quietly. "The boardrooms, the power, the suits?" He looked up, considering the question. "Sometimes," he admitted. But then I look around here, and I realize I have everything I ever chased, just without the noise. She smiled. You know, I think that is what real success looks like. He walked over, wiping his hands on a rag before gently taking her face in his palms. And what about you? Do you ever regret giving a fake boyfriend a chance? Never, she said softly, because he turned out to be the most real thing in my life. He leaned down, kissing her forehead. Best contract I ever signed, he whispered. You keep saying that, she teased. Because it keeps being true, he replied. The evening breeze carried the scent of rain and fresh metal. Across the lot, one of the students switched on the lights, illuminating the sign above them. The words, Training Center, glowed brightly, while below it, in smaller letters, another phrase shone faintly. Built with love, by mistake. Mia laughed when she saw it. Who put that there? Ethan shrugged, pretending innocence. Maybe the universe finally gave us a title. She laughed harder, resting her head on his shoulder. It suits us, she said. He nodded, eyes fixed on the glowing sign. It does, because our mistake was the best thing that ever happened to me. As the night settled, they stood there in the gentle quiet, surrounded by the hum of the machines they had rebuilt together and the laughter that lingered from the day. Their journey had begun with a lie, stumbled through heartbreak, and ended in truth. In the end, neither wealth nor fame defined them. It was courage, integrity, and the simple act of choosing love every single day. And somewhere between the echo of laughter and the soft click of the garage lights turning off, Ethan whispered the words that started it all. Can you be my girlfriend for a day? Mia smiled through the dark, whispering back, For a day? No, Ethan, for a lifetime. The lights dimmed, and the story that began with pretense found its perfect ending in truth.